the measures that have been outlined in the budget?
Wages is somewhat low in this country is because we have a tendency to keeping input costs low.
What the government wants to do with it is to have behavioral change, right?
But how do you pay for the debt, right? If you don't bring in the money.
Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Beyond the Headlines. My name is Amalina Kamal.
And I'm Hazwin Hassan. Now today we'll take a comprehensive look at Malaysia's journey through 2024, a year defined by significant political, economic and social developments. Together, we'll unpack all the events and policies that shaped the nation and set the tone for its future.
Indeed, Hazwin, and 2024 has been a dynamic year thus far, with the unity government having to juggle and maintain political stability, as well as economic challenges like the Ringgit's performance that we've seen fluctuating over the year. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest that's here on set today. First up, we've got Presenna, Nambiar, Business Times news editor. Welcome, Presenna, to Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you for having me.
Next to Presenna, we've got Dr. Nungsari Ahmad, Radhi, economist extraordinaire. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us on this last episode for the year, but certainly not the last show for the series. I hope.
Thank you for having me.
Right, yeah. Looking forward to more episodes, of course, in the years to come. So now let's go straight into the discourse for our show today. The unity government, led by Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, made headlines for its attempts to balance diverse expectations of its coalition members. Some of it we saw being rationalised through the ambitious Madani economy framework aimed at restoring public trust and driving socio-economic growth. On the economic front, the 2025 budget was a key highlight, introducing measures like targeted subsidies and income redistribution strategies. However, challenges such as global inflation, China's economic slowdown, and the volatile ringgit continued to pressure the economy. So my question here is, have these measures helped build credibility among Malaysians? Amalina.
Let's ask our guests here first. Dr. Nungsari, can we start with you?
To be honest, there's a mixed result. I mean, there's very high expectations after the announcement of the Madani economic framework. Of course, I think the public and different parts of the public would chew different parts of the policy.
Right.
Some would look at, if you recall, it was couched in the form of a house. There was issues about growth as in raising the ceiling, and then there was issues about social safety net in terms of raising the floor. And then there's also the pillars that drives, that keeps the house together, which you rightly pointed out. The big part of ensuring that this policy happens is actually to build trust and confidence. So, addressing issues around corruption, competitiveness, credibility of the government in managing its own finances and stuff like that is actually on the trust side of things, in order to do the raising the ceiling in terms of obtaining new growth, and also raising the floor, strengthening the floor in terms of providing a greater social safety net. So different parts of, different political constituency looks different parts of this house, right? So some people who look at the roof would say that there's not enough being done at the roof. Some people who look at the floor say there's not enough being done at the floor. Some people, they don't really care about those two, they care about the pillars. Yep. In terms of have there been enough empowerment or addressing issue around public institutions and regulations, and also corruption and things of that sort. I think if you look at overall, there's enough being done as a whole. Of course, I think there's, like my school teacher used to tell me, the biggest room is the room to improve.
Sure.
Building on that, Presenna, how do you think the government has, I suppose, mitigated financial or at least fiscal sustainability for the nation, and having to also factor in the national debt that we're in?
Okay, so basically, if we want to look at some numbers, right, the latest economic numbers that the government released, they mentioned that actually they've managed to raise revenue to 339 billion. That's almost a record high from the previous year. So basically, they are making headway when it comes to bringing in money through indirect revenue as well as direct taxes. So in that sense, I guess you want to a big part is, yes, the debt, but how do you pay for the debt, right? If you don't bring in the money. So I think that there has been some headway. Perhaps, as Dr. Nungsari said, there will be those who say that not enough was done, because I think we mentioned about the high value tax, but that has not come in yet. So there's room for improvement, but definitely you can already see that there have been steps taken, and I think you have to give them time, I guess, also to sort of let the public also basically take it all in and also see the progress as it goes. Yeah.
Because I think these adjustments, whether it's on the revenue side or on the expenditure side, or reallocation of expenditure from, let's say, spending on subsidies towards spending on other things. I mean, any decisions taken will have losers. There will be winners and there will be losers. So any decision to raise more revenue, to reallocate expenditure will have losers as well as winners, of course. So now dealing with those people, the trade-offs is always, if one part of the country is going to benefit, another part is going to have to pay the price. So I think there's a bit of struggling, mindful that the political environment is also a bit challenging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So building on that, right, Doctor, the fact that we had the diesel subsidy rationalization, so one might say, why can't you just follow up with the RON 95 rationalization? But it doesn't work that way, right, Doctor?
Yeah, that's announced for middle of next year.
Yes, that's right. But some say it's too late, or
Right.
So the RON 95 will be more challenging because diesel basically affected only, say, transportation sector, lorries and buses and things of that sort. Plus, the people who uses diesel vehicles privately, and that's not many of them. Those are the guys, the people who are affected by it. The rest of the logistics, lorry companies, buses, they're not affected by it. But RON 95 is more pervasive, right? Almost everybody, motorcycles, cars.
exactly.
One of the main reasons behind the rationalization exercise is to obviously minimize or eventually cut leakages. How do you see the government progressing with that?
I think that the real rationale for diesel was actually to address the leakages issue.
Yes.
Because the price differential has really been too much, and people have been smuggling diesel across the borders.
Yeah.
But RON 95 is a slightly different thing. RON 95, because it forms a chunk of, I think, that same 20 over billion last year, just on that. That is a function not so much of plugging in smuggling, but also altering behavior generally towards more public transportation rather than private transportation. I mean, I think the rationale is not so much revenue. Of course, revenue is significant, but it's actually to alter behavior towards better utilization of public transportation. Okay. I mean, that's the real reason, if I read it correctly. Of course, you get money out of it.
So I want to touch on economic resilience here, because we are on that topic before we go into national unity. How do you think the measures that have been outlined in the budget, the recent tabling of the budget 2025, helped in this push for income redistribution, rationalization of subsidies? Do you think it has inspired Malaysians, or at least those who are supposed to push for it, to follow suit, to follow whatever the Madani aspirations is all about?
Well, the one thing that on income is actually the decision on minimum wage, right? That was something that was announced, but the announcement of minimum wage from 1,005 to 1,007 is a legislated kind of a push up on the wages. But more fundamental than that is actually the overall addressing the overall inequality of income. Now, that's slightly more difficult journey, because you can't change the nature of jobs or the kind of jobs that firms create, and therefore the kind of wages that people get from employment, unless the kind of thing that firm does changes as well. And that's a slightly longer journey, right? I think people are very impatient about that, because we have, I think, a lot of underemployment, people who are being employed well below their their competency, their capability. So that journey towards having more local firms doing better things and therefore pay better is a slightly longer journey. And one of the things that's necessary towards that journey is actually to remove distortions in prices. If people tend to forget, if we keep input prices low, like we keep fuel prices low, we keep, like all kinds of other prices low, one of the unintended consequences of doing that is actually we keep labor costs low, because labor is also an input, right? So one of the reasons for why wages is somewhat low in this country is because we have a tendency to emphasize keeping input costs low. So we have to remove that distortion in order to also allow wages to go up, and firms then have to do things on the right sort of pricing. See, if electricity were to be subsidized, which it was subsidized, then firms would make decisions on the wrong assumptions on input prices. So the removal of subsidies, on the other hand, affects other people. So we've gone through that. I think we've adjusted on this multi-tier tariff on electricity. So that would then allow firms to figure out how to be competitive and profitable using the new input prices. Now wages will have to go up the same way. So unless we address the low input costs, we will not also be able to address the low wage costs. But that is a slightly longer journey, and people can be slightly impatient about that, because people say, "Oh, I cannot wait for that because the cost of living is also increasing." So but that's a serious issue and a serious problem.
But okay, when we talk about that, how can we ensure, with all this resetting that's being done, is able to also be reflected in the inflation rate that we're seeing today? Because thing is, you said that the input price is low, hence wages are low. There's a link to that, and then we are trying to rationalize this out. And once we take away that,
then price will go up.
Price will go up. Can we ensure that wages can go up too? So the accountability here would be on employers having to ensure proper pay.
But that's the thing. This subsidy rationalization will inevitably have an upward pressure on prices, right? Because you increase input prices, then the product or services that uses that input will also have a increase in prices. You increase in prices of any raw material, the price of the produced material will go up. So I think the reason for why the government has taken some time to do this, and some people are impatient about this, is actually, I think they're worried about inflation, right? If you adjust the subsidies too fast, too drastically, then you will have inflationary pressures. And that's I think that's what they're trying to avoid. Now, your question about whether doing that would result in increase in wages, then that's a more complicated issue, because it's not just input prices. It has to do with can we be competitive? Can we be profitable? Can we then companies pay wages as costs, and they still need to make money, and they can pay only up to the profit that they make. So if companies want to pay more, they have to do better things. Then they make more profit, then they can pay more. So it depends also on productivity, on the creativity, on innovation, and things of that sort, which actually is not just about input prices.
Doctor, I'd just like to ask from an economic standpoint here, because a lot of the policies, what the government wants to do with it is to have behavioral change, right? From the multi-tier tariffs in electricity to subsidy rationalization. But don't you think it's a bit counterintuitive, counterproductive, to have things like minimum wage policies when we should, if behavioral change is what we want to do, get on with that first, and then we'll see changes happening, and we don't have to enforce minimum wage policies.
Well, the minimum wage, I think you can't do minimum wage. Minimum wage is like water level, right? Because it affects everybody. So I think the last time it was done to 1,500. Now very slowly it's done at 1,700, and still people are not happy. Also, there's a whole bunch of other people who are unhappy with it in terms of the firms. But you need to start somewhere. This is the thing, right? If people behave by consumption, and consumption is based on prices, right? So changing behavior, one of the instruments to use is prices, right? So changing people's behavior is to say, if you remove subsidy on RON 95, you make private car ownership to be expensive, more expensive. But at the same time, from a government perspective, government is also spending hundreds of billions on trains, MRTs, ERL, whatever not. So at the same time, government is also subsidizing RON 95, for example. So you're spending 20-30 billion a year to encourage private ownership of cars. At the same time, you're spending hundreds of billions on public transportation. So this cannot go on, right? You either do this or you do this one. So the decision is you do less of this and more of this. So that's the modifying or altering the behavior side
Because
from a government perspective.
I'm asking only because the minimum wage policy will ultimately burden the smaller companies. And that's the sort of grouses that we're hearing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Because, but the cold, non-empathetic answer to that would be
Which you are not.
You're not allowed to do
You are not.
which is actually you have to figure out doing something for which that level of wages can still generate profits. Then you either adjust the price points, which actually you might lose customers, or you adjust the offerings that you give. So you need to start a virtuous cycle of that.
Okay.
But then some people say if you start the virtuous cycle wrongly, it might be just a vicious cycle of spiraling down, right? But I think if you see, that's why you need to improve the productivity side as well, the creativity, the innovativeness, because you can't be selling the same thing,
Right.
you know, at a higher cost for the same price, right?
Yeah.
Just curious, what does the SME Association, or at least on that side of the divide, have a say? I mean, what do they have a say in this? What are some of the considerations, perhaps, when you reach out, or at least when when it comes to the economic perspective of things?
Definitely, it goes back to cost, right? For the SMEs, cost is
Everything.
crucial, it's paramount. So whenever they hear of any kind of dividend tax, even when they announced the dividend tax, you saw the SMEs saying, you're going to tax me when I'm not
profit.
earning as much as the the big guys. And, so cost is a very big issue for SMEs. But like Doctor said, this is like a period of adjustment. So everybody needs to adjust. The idea is we are all working towards something, right? So of course there will be short-term pain, but the idea is we have long-term gain lah. But if in between somebody changes the script,
That's true.
then
or some external changes.
exactly external changes happen. That's when we sort of may lose the plot. But the idea is at this point you can still see that it's progressing according to script, more so than not.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's where we are at. So the idea of there will be short-term pain, prices going up. People arguing about minimum wage, the fact that it's not enough. Some will say it's too much. And then having EPF for foreign workers, there's an issue with that when you would think as a human being we would want everyone to have financial stability. But the point is it hurts someone, right? Like what Doctor was saying. So I think this is a period of adjustment. So far, everyone is seeing it progressing. Like if you have seen like the foreign entities like IMF, Fitch ratings, they have affirmed Malaysia's position.
Right.
So they're saying that you're on the right track. Keep going.
Okay.
It's a BBB+ rating.
Yes, that's right. So people may not see the significance of it, but the fact is we have made changes, and this is them acknowledging we see you, but we're waiting for more. Right, Doctor?
The affirmation, I think sometimes people Main Street lah, kita tak ada Wall Street, but the affirmation that the sovereign rating is BBB plus, investment grade, is very important because the budget is still in deficit. It will be in deficit for so many years, which means the government needs to borrow.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, so you have to borrow. If the sovereign rating is capped at what it is, or even better, then the cost of borrowing is actually
Wagner's law, correct?
Yeah, because you see people, the amount of income tax that we pay, all of us, personal income tax, it's not enough to pay for the interest on the loans that's outstanding. So to ensure that the sovereign rating is capped at this level or better is very, very, very important for fiscal sustainability. But if any sovereign rating is deteriorated, then the overall cost of credit for firms will also go up. So that's why fiscal prudence is essential to ensure that sovereign ratings remain the same, and therefore the cost of borrowing for private firms also remain as what it is right now. But that's for the normal consumer household, that really doesn't matter to them, but it matters a lot.
These temporary hurts that you allude to, this is economics 101, basic, right? You are going to need some adjustments here and there. And I think this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Keynesian economics, right?
But
where government intervention is needed when there's a little bit of a bottleneck happening, but then it should then be able to work itself out.
In my experience, both policymakers and even the beneficiaries or the whatever of policies, somehow we don't teach people enough that in life there's always a trade-off, right? You have this or you have this. You can't have both.
No pain, no gain, I guess.
Yeah, you can't have, what was it? You can have the cake and eat it too, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, I'd like to know all of my, I suppose, guests here, as well as you, Hazwin, thoughts on how can we balance economic resilience and having to ensure Malaysia is on the right path, while also think about the welfare of the nation. For instance, having to push out for more welfare programs. One of it, I suppose, the incentive would be the SCR. There's a big allocation put into that.
Yeah.
Dr. Nungsari, from an economic perspective, again.
For the longest time, I think it's not peculiar to Malaysia, but somehow, remember, you're young enough, maybe not to remember. There was a time when people say, the Asian values is that we don't give money to people. Older people or poorer cousins, family take care of them. The government shouldn't give them money. I think we've changed from BRIM and onwards until now. We believe that actually the more efficient way of helping people is just to give them money, right? If you create programs, another government department, another government agency, every ringgit you allocate then, and then probably 30, 40 cents reach the target. So the easiest way, the most efficient way is just to give money, give them cash. And then if you measure welfare by consumption, then the more they consume, the higher welfare they're supposed to be on theoretically. But that's what we do. I think we need to. I think the initial one is attempt on some income support, direct transfers. The other one is actually to develop the social work space. See, too much of social work is informal, right? So recently, if you recall, when they announced the minimum wage, so there were some people who were, it cuts both ways. You say you want to encourage more women to stay in the labour market. Then one of the prerequisites for that, though not necessarily the sufficient condition, is actually to provide affordable healthcare. At the same time, that childcare is usually in the informal sector, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, you say no. Social work has to be a profession, right? It has to be subject to formal rules. So they're subject to minimum wage. Then the cost of childcare goes up, right? Because of the imposition or the formalization of childcare, for example, social work. So I think the one that they're still struggling in coming up with something is actually how do you professionalize and make social work a vocation, right? A formal thing, and that supports the not just childcare but a whole bunch of other social work. We have this tradition of social work as being, not a profession. It's done out of apa.
It's like an extracurricular sort of
I think we can no
activity.
longer afford that. We have to professionalize it, formalize it, regulate it, accredit, train, and do it properly. Whether it is taking care of the age, the old people, handicapped, or children, and so on. So we need to do that. And then there are other problems that we're not addressing, like mental health issues, youth delinquency, and things like that. So we're only beginning, I think, to put that foundation towards ensuring that the floor to the house is actually quite strong and broad enough and granular enough that otherwise if you make it too, a lot of people just falls through the cracks, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So I think the emphasis of this Prime Minister is to ensure that the floor is sufficiently good. The roof, I think people with money, they can figure out how to make money, right? You
So
just
you
need
mean
to
you can raise it and
yeah, you want the roof to go up, but actually you say they know how to make money. You just get out of the way, right? And they know how to make money, but the floor is something that needs to be
foolproof.
Government needs to get involved, right? Otherwise it's difficult. Yeah.
Right. And I think I'd like to second what you just said, extending that care and thought, into making sure that people of all professions, whether or not it's a formal or informal vocation, are taken care of in terms of welfare and other aids. Because I know that the government is actively extending that to the gig workers, people working in these sort of one-off jobs.
Yeah.
Even buskers, and I'm glad that I'm hearing these sort of
because
talks going on. Yeah,
because I think you raised the issue about I think we need to why people making a big fuss about foreign workers paying EPF.
Yes.
So workers lah, they pay EPF lah kan.
Yeah.
So if we regard and if we regard if we have a broader sense of livelihood and the future of jobs, the different nature of jobs, right? So not all jobs will be like, you come into the office at 9 and get out at 5, right? But the social safety net in terms of, the kinds of stuff offered by SOCSO, accident at the workplace, EPF, the retirement, benefits of that sort needs to be broadened, right? To recognize that work, work going forward is not the kind of work that your mum or your dad used to do. You go in at 9, come back at 5, work for 30 years, and you're done with another EPF. I think the gig workers are not like that. The informal sectors are not like that. So we need to make sure that everybody is captured within that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the pandemic, if anything, that should have taught us what
we
working from home is all about.
We have short memories.
That is true. I mean, that's true of all governments.
No, we also have short memories.
Correction. Because we're talking about social safety net, and we're talking about how we manage our money in a sense whereby on an individual level, right? So we have to talk about the cost of living challenges here. We understand that at the moment, Malaysia is experiencing a challenge in dealing with the aged, right? We are an aging nation, and we don't seem to have proper facilities to support that, or at least proper, I suppose, mechanism to support that. Thoughts on having to push for better elderly or at least aged safety sort of security program that we have to address now, as opposed to 5 years later.
As opposed to 20 years later. So like I think the EPF did something this year, right? Yes. They said, I was syndicated in that process. They created a third account, right?
Yes.
The 5% that you can take out like any time. And then the trade-off was to increase the first account to 70%.
That's right.
So I thought, wow, just to not let people be upset. For the 70%, they have to be kept until 50. you offer 5% that you can take out, right? Then account 2 is the usual account you can partially take out. So that's one, to ensure that people who are working have enough at the end of their working life, right?
But that we're not seeing that at the moment.
We're not
right
seeing
now,
that because our salaries are low.
Okay.
Right? Our salaries are low because people work for, I mean, I'm totally respectful of people who work decent, honestly for a living. But if you get paid very low wages, your contribution and your employer's contribution, 20%, 21%, just comes up to pittance at the end of by the time you're 60. So we need to increase that. But beyond those people who are working and having an employer, you have these other people who are actually not even employed in that sense, right? So first is to have savings mechanism to ensure that at the end of your life you have something. But secondly, is actually the professionalizing of and institutionalizing of taking care of old people. We don't quite have that actually.
Go back to your
But we
point,
are we're embarking on a lot more private and public partnerships, right?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that actually has been the emphasis of in the Madani framework was actually, okay, government can only do so much because of budgetary constraint. The private sector tends to do things when they can cover costs. So we need a third sector.
Or we're not seeing as an CSR thing.
The
Sorry.
civil, the civil society, the not for profit to actually come in and do these things. Because one of the things that COVID taught us was actually we have enough energy and organisation at the grassroots level to do things, and I think they ought to be empowered more on providing social services, or even you have private hospitals, not-for-profit hospitals, not-for-profit care and things of that. So you need to expand that because there's only so much government can do with its own fiscal resources. Right. And then private sector will do like private hospital. Kan? You do kalau you ada insurance, you have money, okay lah. If you don't, then you have to go to public hospitals, or there are a few not-for-profit hospitals. Penang has Lam Wai, here got Tong Shin. So you need more of those things. Otherwise, quite a sizable slice of society will be
ignored,
mixing out.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Now let's segue into Ringgit's performance. We saw a lot of updates on that, especially Dr. Yes.
I wish I had a crystal ball. I would look at it every day and tell you tomorrow it's going to go up.
Please. So we saw the volatility of the Ringgit's performance, especially throughout the year. How has it impacted, I suppose, the confidence of foreign investments, especially in Malaysia?
Foreign investments and Ringgit. Doctor. Okay, so I think when it comes to investments, the Ringgit is not quite, because the Ringgit is more of a show of people's confidence in Malaysia in some parts. Yeah. So I think what happened throughout the year was that, Bank Negara has consistently said it is being dictated by external forces, which is what we saw. And I think it was very clear in the third quarter, suddenly the Ringgit shot up like 12% in that one quarter, right? So what happened then, right? You saw exporters losing money. Yeah. So that's the function of how everything works, right? So exporters lose money, but everybody else was happy. Like when you imported stuff, it was cheaper. Yeah. But now again, we are back to almost square one, right? Because it's down to, I think, just a 2 or 1% appreciation.
What is it now? 4.5?
4.45 is about there. Yeah. So it was short-lived, right? Because basically it is being dictated by external forces, where it's a lot of the confidence of people. It doesn't mean that people lost confidence in the Ringgit. It was more of basically everything else was doing so well that people started parking money there, or less of a consideration came to Malaysia.
Yeah.
Right. But do you think that China's economic situation, or at least influence, had a role to play, especially in the Ringgit's performance?
Actually, on fundamentals, determinants of the Ringgit is actually the demand for Ringgit. It's trade. The more you sell, the better it is for the ringgit. The more you buy, the worse off it is for the ringgit. So that's one more fundamental determination of the ringgit. But the more speculative side of it, or the more capital market side of it, that's real, right? You sell goods, you buy goods.
Yes.
But the more money market side, capital market side of it is actually the interest rate differential between Malaysian ringgit and say US dollars. So the reason why it shot up in the third quarter, because the Fed reduces its interest rate, right? So the interest rate differential between the US and ringgit narrowed, right? So you see, before this whole cycle started, the interest rate because the US kept the interest rate at almost zero during the after the post 2008 2009 and during COVID, and we were having like 2%. So that's 200 basis points ringgit premium over the dollar, right? So when the Fed goes up to 5 and we kept at 3, so the spread reverses, right? So if I have money, I'm in London, if I have a choice of buying Malaysian bonds or keeping it in FD in the US, I get more money putting FD in the US than buying Malaysian bonds.
Exactly.
So I then take my ringgit out and buy those assets. So that thing, that's not much we can do, right? So now people are just looking, okay, this Trump fellow, Trump version 2, what is he going to do? Is he going to be, if he's pro-dollar, then we're going to have the short end of it lah. And if he's more laissez-faire, relaxed, then maybe it rebalances again. But the question is, the open question is Trump all talk against China, or he means half of it, or he means all of it, or it's just talk?
Yeah.
Because
he's made his stance very clear on that. I mean, he's very policy making, very unilateral. He in some ways he threatened to make sure that if there were to be a one currency among the BRICS,
right,
our new BRICS.
No, but yesterday he
then
said.
They'll have to
But he said, talk about volatility. Yesterday he said, "Hey, between me and Xi Jinping, we can solve the world's problem."
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, he's quite a volatile guy. But the bark is louder than the bite in many ways. But we're not sure how he will actually unfold his trade war thing against China.
Yeah.
Sorry, not to bring in US politics into this, but I suppose his supporters might, counter that, because it's not just bark; he has bite too. Some of his policies does resonate to a lot. I mean, it's reflecting.
But he's
on
a
his
politician.
current
He will say things to win the votes. But I think there will be a segment of his supporters who actually believes what he says.
Right.
There's also a segment of his supporters who knows that the qualitative side of what he says is more important than the actual quantitative. They wanted somebody who changes the status quo, right? This is the guy who's going to change the status quo. So they just voted for it. Of course, there are also all this, like here we have 20%, whatever, 30% who are hardcore this way or hardcore that way, right? So,
Sorry, one question before we go into Bank Negara's monetary policies. Because we talk about changing the status quo, but we want to talk about this on a global context. BRICS, right? Malaysia's, I suppose, inclination towards it, and also our aspirations, or at least, I won't say favoritism, but support towards a one China policy. How do you view us?
this one China thing, the US is being very disingenuous, I'll use a polite word, because they have recognized the one China policy, right? US has always recognized. When Nixon went to China in 72, Tun Razak went in 74, there was a recognition of one China. They recognized there's only one China by Nixon going to China. This rhetoric of two China thing is only something that they bring about, recently. So our Malaysian foreign policy was quite clear. When Tun Razak went to China in 74, 50 years now, it was a recognition of one China. So the world has always been on one China. So we basically say, to you dengan Taiwan, to you punya problem lah. But the US is now playing up this rhetoric of one China, two China thing because of its own trade relationships and security relationship vis-a-vis China. So Malaysia actually has a very nimble, is that the right word? Nimble, flexible foreign
Agile.
policy. You cannot ignore the big guy in the
I
neighborhood.
believe they say neutral.
We are friends to all.
Yes.
They're too small.
But do you think that partnerships with China, especially now with BRICS in the horizon, is that really much of a threat to the dollar?
No, because on a fundamental basis, we trade more with China than we do with the US. So the trade happens between renminbi, ringgit, more than between say ringgit and dollar. So of course, that relationship is an important relationship. Put aside historical, geographical thing, just on trade basis, China is an important trade partner, and China is, it depends on your horizon, right? I mean, 500 years ago, they were the big guys in the world. Maybe the West has a very shorter landscape, right? If you look at it, 500 years ago, Ming Dynasty, Malacca, whatever, the India and China was like 50% of the world economy. 200 years ago, they were nothing. We are like somewhere in the middle, kind of too small, not big enough. So we have to be friendly to everybody, I suppose. So the China tilt, you seem to suggest there's a China tilt. I think there's not a China tilt. It's a more recognition that we are in the middle of, say, China and India, the archipelago, Indonesia, and even in the archipelago, we're just a small thing in the 300 million Indonesian giant. So we have to play a very open, flexible sort of game. People say, you pretend to be whatever to everybody, but when you're small, you have to be. Singapore seems to be more pro-China a bit, or at least Singapore is trying to teach the West about China. We are not so preachy as that, but clearly we find that a small country needs to hedge against big continental economies with regional coalition, right?
Balance of power.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Apparently, the buzzword for this, for whatever we just talked about, is diversification.
Of risk, of kawan-kawan.
Of
Or
kawan
keeping
berkawan.
your enemies close and your friends.
No, we have no enemies, Hazwin.
We have
Or
no enemy.
the enemy of your friend
It's-
is your friend.
Yeah.
So, the Bank Negara governor actually did say, talk about China's economic stimulus package that, it has offered to partnering nations. At least for Malaysia's side, we are, I suppose, still looking into how we can get benefits through it. For instance, the Republic of China seems to aim for a 5.0% of economic growth globally. But it's nowhere near that. And Malaysia, when we look at that scale, how can we match and how can we, I suppose, be a good partner then?
No, I think the governor was also alluding to all this bilateral. See, this is why Trump reacted to this, right? If two countries settle payments on the firm level in non-dollar, then the demand for the dollar in the world will go down. When the demand of the dollar go down, then the US economy is actually nothing except for the dollar lah, because they have $32 trillion worth of debt. They can literally print money and people will use that money, right? But if Malaysia and China, or China and Brazil, South, can settle trade in non-dollars, then the demand for dollars will go down. Then the value of the dollar will go down. So that's an existential threat to the
dollar,
American.
yeah.
So that's why Trump issued that warning, right? So don't you guys try to come up with another
Right.
currency that you can settle your payments. But many countries bilaterally has gone into this bilateral settlements, right? Like
And certainly our own Prime Minister is all for it.
no, because then we are not held hostage by the behavior of the dollar. See, right now, whatever is being decided in Washington by the Fed affects us.
Yes.
We had nothing to do with this, right?
Right, that's
But
right,
it affects us. So if you cannot decouple totally from the dollar, but if you can weaken the relationship,
yeah.
then at least it gives us a lot more flexibility. You ask any head of government, they will say that they want to decouple from the dollar to the extent that they can, because that will free up our dependency on decisions being taken over there. So let's say China buys a lot of our palm oil, and then let's say we need to buy rice from them, because we do actually, we don't have enough rice. So the settlement can be done on that basis, right? So there's no need for exchange of renminbi or ringgit or dollars. If the quotation can be done in you quote me a price in ringgit or in renminbi, then I can settle in that basis, rather than you quote me $1 and I have to settle in dollars. So I have to buy dollars, sell ringgit and pay you. So that's what we're
More
trying to
cost,
avoid. Yeah. So that's the dollar is still quite strong.
I mean, it's in our best interest also that we have these sort of direct exchanges rather than relying on a single currency, like what happened to the euro or what happened to the EU, right?
Yeah.
So
The EU is basically
is a big lesson for the rest of the world.
Yeah. So actually, it's a normal thing, but a small country like us can't do it alone. But if there's a group of, I don't think the BRICS are intending to issue a new currency, but if they can do sort of bilateral sort of settlements, I think that would help. People, you see, like we spoke earlier, the Fed raises interest rate or the Fed reduce interest rate, it affects our inflation rate, right?
Yeah.
Or it affects ringgit, and because ringgit goes down, then the price of import goes up, and then it affects inflation. But the decision was taken over there, right? So, but it's okay, fine, but we need to weaken that relationship a bit, I think, for everyone.
Right. We have less than 10 minutes
Talk
before
to
we can wrap the show.
No, doctor. I think
There are
you're
still a few
too
things
straight.
that I want to go through. But let's just wrap up with, what do you think of Bank Negara's monetary policies that it has introduced in terms of ensuring that we have, I suppose...
Because I'm on the board of Bank Negara, so I have to be careful about this. No, I think Bank Negara has been very prudent, very transparent. I think people should read the Monetary Policy Committee notes. After they have every meeting, they will issue they used to issue one paragraph. Now they're less conservative. They issue like more than one paragraph. Very well chosen, very thought through choices of words, and to signal why they took the decision that they take, and they have been consistent. I think they have provided the certainty as well as clarity on the policy. You see, talk about inflation last time. So that's why inflation is very important, because even in the subsidy rationalization and all this, you don't want inflation to go up too much, because then you might force monetary policy to come in as a tool to arrest inflation, right? Monetary policy, I'll say this, my governor might get upset. Monetary policy is a blunt instrument, right? It's a hard tool to contain inflation, which is what the Fed is doing, right? Raise interest rate just to bring down inflation. It affects everybody. So we want the use of any policy not to be so
Hard-hitting.
hard-hitting, because instruments are, people say the invisible hand of the market. You have the very visible hand of the government, right? So you don't want the government to come in with its visible, gropey hands and try to do things. Very much as you don't want the Bank Negara to come in with its own monetary policy, try to do things. So in other words, light touch is good, right? So So I won't contravene my fact that I'm on the
And
board of
speaking of the intervening hand here, I mean, one thing that I'd like to touch on what Bank Negara is, I think, doing well on is they're looking to abolish the flat rate interest for personal financing, right? It was reported a couple of days ago, which includes the buy now, pay later BNPL arrangements. So in a draft exposure on Monday, BNM said it was looking for feedback on new requirements to abolish the offering of personal financing, where interest profit charges are computed using flat rate with rule of 78 method. Now, can either one of you just very briefly explain what that means, and especially that rule of 78 method?
Because I'm conflicted here, so
The press is all yours.
no, but
Or at least just sort of very much simplify what this means.
He's really good at explaining.
No, I don't quite. I can't really answer the specific question on that. But I think Bank Negara regulates. Besides conducting monetary policy, it regulates banks, financial institutions. But there's a big segment of lending and borrowing that's done outside of that system, right? Through not along lah. Legal loans, like credit company,
personal financing,
personal financing, hire purchases, buy now, pay later. I shouldn't mention names, but a lot of stores offer all this. Just take it out, pay. I think they will introduce regulation on those things to ensure that household or individuals are not. Okay, that's a personal choice. You want to take on credit to what to do kan. Tapi at least the people offering credit are doing it in a clear, transparent manner. Sometimes people are quite illiterate, They say, okay, take out the TV, RM30, you bayar whatever lah, RM50 for the next 20 years or something. So the implied interest or credit cost there, literacy on higher purchases and buy now, pay later costs. Even credit card, people don't care, kan? It's 18%. Right. So the literacy around that and the regulation on the people offering that sort of credit needs to be better regulated. And I think the governor is alluding to there will be legislation, not necessarily under the bank, but for consumer credit to be regulated better. Because these are entities outside of financial institutions or insurance. These are credit companies, koperasi, so bagi hutang, all this higher purchase and all these things. Because household debt that is generated and created by, people credit lah, fine, but some of the cost of credit is ridiculously high.
How does this, I suppose, fall in tandem together with the current 12 Malaysian plan, and because we're going to the 13th Malaysian plan? 12 Malaysian plan is supposed to end its course by 2025, right? So we've got 1 year left, and then before we go into the next one, how would this support the aspirations within?
But that I think the minister is actually adopting a very slightly novel approach, really questioning even the 5-year tenure. Is it a relic of the past? How do we approach the 5-year plan? Because the 5-year plan only concerns development expenditure, buat jalan, buat sekolah, that sort of thing, but not the operational budget of the government. So the amount of money that the government has to as development expenditure to do things, to build things, is getting smaller as the economy has grown to be 1.6 trillion ringgit, but the development budget is being around 80-90 billion. So if you want the development budget to affect the economy, so this is like a small tail trying to wag a big dog, So if you can still use a small tail to wag a big dog, maybe you have to do this thing properly lah. Efficiently, do it the right things, because this in economic statistics, this is considered public investments, and the level of public investment in the country has gone down over the years because we don't have enough money to do this. So the 13th Malaysia plan has to be about, with the limited amount of funds that you have, say 100 billion a year for 5 years, say 500 billion. what's the best use of this, right? More schools, more roads, more what? Or more investments in human capital kind of a thing. So that's what I think the 13th Malaysia Plan is all about. Because, if you think about it, 100 billion a year in an economy of 1.6 is not much, kan? Tapi from one entity is not it's a sizable number lah, because nobody can have 100 billion a year to spend, right? The government has 100 billion a year to spend on development, but it has to spend it wisely. So I think the minister is like going around asking for ideas and stuff. So, kita nak buat AI, digitization.
Spread too thin, don't you think, Doctor?
Tu roti canai lah. So you want paper to say. To spend on enough on certain things to make a difference, right?
Yes.
If we pull it out in all directions,
Exactly.
they become too thin, right?
Yes.
So, but we have so much problem. Healthcare the problem, schools are the education are the problem,
It seems that we have to really look from the inside out instead of just building that shell and filling it, with whatever makes sense at the moment, right?
No, because right now I think the there's all this energy transition thing going on,
Right.
Climate change, sustainability, and then there's this social safety net thing. Do we need to spend more on these things? So there's no shortage of need to spend on. It's just the issue is prioritization and sequencing of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Prioritization. What's certain is that in 2025, we're going to see more partnerships, especially when it comes to global trade, in the form of the Belt and Road Initiative and the CPTPP. CPTPP.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, later we'll put what CPTPP means.
It'll be up on the screen.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Anyway, Dr. Nungsari, are there potential risks or I suppose dependencies arising from such partnerships, especially when Malaysia is already trying to prioritize or reprioritize their spendings?
No, but this is the thing of being smart, I think. Like we take the ECRL, for example, right? This thing is financed through China Exim Bank. Now, for the Chinese, line from Kelantan to Port Klang is nothing. Right. So when you get involved in these big things with big economies, scale and perspective is important, right? Because you're partnering with somebody who is so much bigger than you. Their perspective for scale and your perspective for scale is important. It's different. So you need to enter. Do we need to enter into these things? Yes, we do. But we have to enter with eyes wide open lah. And katakan, like you staying next door to a very rich guy, 100,000 is worth something for him, 100,000 is worth something for you, but it's worth very different value, right?
Yes.
So I think we need to just be careful about perspective and scale. The inevitability of doing it, I think, is inevitable, but be careful about engaging with giants, whether it's China, India, US,
Or waking up a sleeping giant. That's
no, I
more
mean
dangerous.
you should be able to walk among giants, but not get stamped on and not being collateral damage to another giant. Sometimes we believe too much in our own PR that we think that we are big. I think we are not big.
I mean, because we've come to the end of the
Okay,
episode, but we
Can't wait.
I mean, there's a lot to talk about, right? But of course, I mean, this is not the last.
Okay.
Recording, of course, but it's the last for the year. But we want to end it with one short, sweet note, because we talked about the fiscal side of things as well as the economic sort of injection that we need to consider, especially when we push for certain policies, right? But we fail to understand that politics also play a role in ensuring sustainability, longevity, right? Race-based sort of action remains something that is visible here in Malaysia. Dr. Nungsari, how can the government balance, the policies that are of such with broader socio-economic goals?
I have to say, unfortunately, I think race relations when I was in the 20s or teenagers much better than what it is now. At least the rhetoric of it, or at least in real lived experience, I think it's better. So, but I've been one of those who believe I think human nature is so much better than what politicians sell it to be lah. And so I think all this racism or misogynistic kind of tendencies that's being displayed should be called out. Actually, I think we are a little bit too reserved and polite to call out things for what they are, and then it's being read as though we tolerated those things, right? And then you get association lah. Oh, people like you said something like that. Then since you didn't say anything, you are like that also, kan? So then it doesn't really develop cohesion. It's not that we need to agree on everything. We can disagree, but it doesn't develop a sense of this togetherness that is necessary to develop institutions. Like if we have to have nice schools or good schools, what good school lah? Kan? Or functioning institution, we do a functioning institution. Now the fact that we don't believe in the same thing or we eat different things, that's a different issue lah. Kan? But we tend to conflate everything. We conflate everything. Then it becomes, I'll say this lah. I mean, not to be, to piss off people or anything, but the reason people are opposed to, like me, opposed to what's happening in Gaza is because we say the ideology of Zionism is actually an evil thing, a bad thing. No, Zionism is actually conflating place, race, and religion. Okay. So there's food for thought for that. So if we think that it's not a good thing, so we shouldn't be doing that same thing. If we go down that road, then we will lose all the potential dividends that we can get to be meaningful in the neighborhood that we are in by harnessing the total strength that we have as a nation. People should differentiate between differences of views or natural differences or whatever, and working together, right? Like we can totally disagree with each other and sit down here and discuss. So that's fine. So that level of maturity, I hope, is there. So if there's any New Year wish, I wish that would be the case.
The conflation, I think, is deliberate. It's on purpose. And I think there's one very easy answer: expediency, political expediency.
Yeah.
It's a tool that all populist politicians especially use.
That's why I said people are, I think human nature is much better than what is being sold by politics. Yeah.
Sorry, one last question. I promise. Dr. Nungsari, I want your thoughts on the Plan Transformasi Ekonomi Bumiputra 2035 that was introduced this year, right?
Yeah.
We're supposed to have more, I suppose, inclusion when it comes to the I suppose, how do you define the brackets of what Bumiputra is all about, right? Looking at low-income groups, having to ensure the orang asli is also participating in all the government's efforts of, having to level the playing field here.
No, I think I've always believed that you keep it simple. I think you if there's scarcity of resources, public resources to expand, then you help the people who needs the most help lah. Doesn't matter who they are, kan? And it so happened that statistically there will be more Malays. Memang statistically there are more Malays pun, 50 or 60% are Malays. So if 60% of the poor are Malays, help lah. But I'm sure there are 20% of the poor are Indian or Chinese or whatever, or indigenous people. So I mean, you can't go wrong by being fair. I don't know why people tend to forget this. If you're fair, I think the planets will get aligned to get the right things happen. And if you're not fair, not fair in Islam is actually zalim. Zalim is actually a bad thing, bad karma. Karma or dharma, I forgot. Karma.
Karma is way of life, I think.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, but just being fair, helping those who needs help most. And I think once you do that, I think the planets will be aligned and then things will turn out okay.
I couldn't agree with you more there, Doctor. I think it's not about, I mean, do targeted welfare, whatever you have to, but just don't let anyone get left behind. And I think that's been the problem over these years, and that's what people are upset about.
Follow through. I mean, you've got all these big ideas, but there's the auditing always usually fails, right?
Because I think people who have the means just want to see it being. I mean, if you pay tax, right? You want the tax money to be used. You to be used properly, and people don't mind their tax money to go to help people who are deserving, right?
Yes.
The only thing people get upset is actually, if I pay tax and it goes to somebody who is richer than me or something. Then people say, then people
The
get
Maha
upset.
Kaya.
Or what we have been seeing with the whole FV debacle, right? Yeah.
That is. I was surprised by the level of. So I don't know the person. I'm not, but the level of anger I thought was quite telling.
I think the level of anger is on the oversight that was not done, especially when it comes to the annual reviews in that particular case.
I thought we should be taking more risks to do better things. We should accept the fact that we will fail more than we would succeed, and as long as we learn from failures, then we are fine. But there is an underlying anger. I'm not privy to all these personalities and whatever, but there's an anger that the seething anger there that says, I don't get nothing, right?
Of course,
The other people get stuff, and they have more than me.
They say so in the comments.
So that needs to be addressed. The issue of justice,
right?
And it gets amplified because you see them on social media, right? You literally just need to pick up your phone and you can start seeing. You get a glimpse into what kind of lifestyle they have.
So that makes it worse. So
it's like fueling,
fueling the thing.
Yeah.
So we don't go to the specifics of it, but just recognizing that there is anger lah. And
it comes from somewhere, right?
It comes from. I don't have anything. I'm struggling.
Yes.
Why are these things that are supposed to help people like me help people like that? That sort of thing. But what I'm trying to say is actually we need to understand that we need to take risks. We need to be okay with failures in order to learn and also do new things. But that experience, I don't know. Oh my God, I wouldn't want to be on the giving side, nor on the receiving side. But that's a bad thing to end up with. Because actually we should do more of that. But it tells a lot about people feeling marginalized, which is not a good thing.
This is one thing that has been, we have been taking a lot of attention for this year, especially. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this particular episode for the year. If you like this particular episode, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell if you haven't already. You'll not only get Beyond the Headlines update, other news reports on NSC Online will be delivered to you. Once again, I'd like to thank my guests that's here on set today. Presenna, Nambiar, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Dr. Nungsari, Ahmad, Radhi, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you as well, Hazwin.
Oh, thank you, Malina. Always a pleasure.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we can say, just so our audience back at home, in terms of a Happy New Year, we'll do it together, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right? Okay.
Special shout out.
A special shout out. Right. To all our viewers, our loyal viewers on Beyond the Headlines, we all want to wish, this camera, want to wish a very
Happy New Year
and happy 2025. We'll see you next year.